Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into a topic that's really important, for obvious reasons, to any modern democracy.
Mhm.
And that is how technology is changing democracy.
Mhm.
And we're going to be drawing our information and insights from a podcast episode that we listened to
Okay.
that really delved into this.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about, both the good and the bad and,
Right, because it's both.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it can be.
So to kick things off,
Mhm.
I think it's worth just acknowledging how much social media has completely transformed the way we engage with politics.
For sure.
I mean, think about like the 2016 U.S. presidential election.
Yeah.
It was like everyone was glued to their phones,
Mhm.
constantly reacting to every little development.
Oh, yeah, I definitely remember that.
Yeah, and I feel like that was a real turning point in terms of how social media started to dominate the political conversation.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's really interesting is how social media has allowed politicians to kind of bypass traditional media outlets and speak directly to voters,
Hmm. Right.
which, on the one hand can be a really good thing in terms of transparency and feeling like you have a more direct connection with your elected officials. But on the other hand, it's also created some serious problems like echo chambers.
Yeah, echo chambers
Yeah.
and the spread of misinformation.
Yeah, where people are only exposed to information that confirms their existing beliefs.
Right. And it's like algorithms are designed to keep feeding you more of what you already agree with.
Exactly.
So you end up in this bubble where you're never really challenged to think critically or consider different perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, think about your own social media feeds.
Yeah.
How often do you see things that actually make you question your own beliefs or
Right.
challenge your assumptions?
Not as often as I probably should.
It's tough. It's tough to break out of those echo chambers.
Yeah. And it's scary to think about how these algorithms are shaping our understanding of the world without us even realizing it.
Absolutely.
Like there's this digital media expert, Dr. Jennifer Kim, who said something really interesting. She compared social media algorithms to blinders that prevent us from seeing different perspectives and engaging in meaningful debate.
Oh, wow. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how much control we have over the information we're consuming.
Right. And whether we're actually forming our own opinions or just being fed what the algorithm thinks we want to see.
It's almost like we're outsourcing our critical thinking to these platforms.
Hid away. Yeah.
Definitely something to be mindful of.
Immediately.
So yeah, social media, it's a powerful tool for political engagement.
Yeah,
But it also comes with some serious risks.
for sure.
And I think we need to be having a much more open and honest conversation about those risks.
I agree.
So moving on from social media,
Okay.
I want to talk about another way that technology is changing democracy, and that's e-voting,
Oh, yeah.
like online voting.
Okay.
It's gained a lot of traction in recent years with
Yeah.
countries like Estonia, even implementing nationwide online voting systems.
Interesting.
And it's definitely appealing from a convenience standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
Like imagine being able to vote from anywhere in the world
Yeah.
with just a few clicks.
Much easier than going to the polls.
Right. Especially for younger generations.
Yeah.
And people with disabilities.
And people who travel a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it could potentially increase voter turnout significantly.
Yeah, for sure.
But of course, there are also concerns.
Yeah, especially when it comes to security.
Yeah. Security is huge.
Huge.
Like we need to be absolutely certain that these systems are secure from hacking and fraud
Of course.
and manipulation.
Okay.
Because if we don't trust the integrity of our elections,
Right.
then the whole system falls apart.
Exactly. That's the foundation of the democracy.
Exactly.
So it's paramount.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to ensuring the security of e-voting?
Well, I think one of the most important things is strong encryption. Like making sure that the votes are transmitted securely and can't be intercepted or tampered with.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people get nervous.
Oh, yeah, because it's all happening online.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's always that fear that someone could hack into the system and change the results.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate fear. I mean, we've seen how vulnerable online systems can be
Right?
to cyber attacks.
Absolutely. So how do we even begin to address those fears?
Well, I think transparency is really important.
Right.
Like, people need to understand how these systems work
Right.
and what security measures are in place.
Right.
And there needs to be regular security audits
Okay.
to make sure that the system is up to date and that any vulnerabilities are being addressed.
Right. So it's not just about building a secure system, but also about proving to the public that it's secure.
Exactly. Trust is essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where things get tricky.
Yeah, because there's a lot of mistrust.
Right. especially when it comes to technology and government.
Right.
So it's a real challenge,
For sure.
but I think it's a challenge worth tackling.
Absolutely. Because if we can get e-voting,
Mm.
right, it has the potential to revolutionize the way we participate in democracy.
Exactly. Make it more accessible,
Yeah.
more convenient.
More efficient.
Yeah. So there's a lot at stake.
A lot at stake.
So we've talked about social media and e-voting,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those are just two examples of how technology is transforming democracy.
Yeah, just the tip of the iceberg.
But it's not all about specific technologies.
Right.
I think there's also a broader question about our individual responsibility
Oh, yeah.
in navigating this digital landscape.
Absolutely.
Like, how do we stay informed
Yeah.
and engaged
Mhm.
without getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information and the constant noise?
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
It is, and it's changing all the time. It's
Yeah.
hard to keep up.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with being more mindful
Okay.
of the information we're consuming. Like,
Yeah.
where is it coming from?
Yeah.
What are their biases? What are they trying to get me to believe?
Right. It's about being critical
Yeah.
of what we see online.
And being willing to do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Like, if something sounds too good to be true
Yeah.
or too outrageous,
Right.
it probably is.
Probably is.
Take a few minutes to check it out.
Fact check it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's also about being aware of our own biases.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like we all have them.
We all do.
And it's easy to fall into the trap of only reading things that confirm our existing beliefs.
Which brings us back to the echo chambers.
Exactly. So how do we break out of those echo chambers?
Well, I think it takes a conscious effort
Okay.
to seek out different perspectives.
Okay.
Like, read articles from sources you don't normally agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Follow people on social media who have different viewpoints.
Challenge yourself.
Yeah, expose yourself to different ideas.
Right, because that's how we grow.
Exactly. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
And that's how we become more informed citizens.
So it's about being proactive
Yeah.
and taking control of our own information consumption.
Absolutely. We can't just passively scroll through our feeds
Yeah.
and expect to be well informed.
Exactly. We have to be intentional about it.
Exactly.
So it's a lot of responsibility,
yeah, it is.
but it's also empowering,
It is.
you know, because it means that we have the power to shape our own understanding of the world.
And ultimately, the power to shape the future of democracy.
Yeah. It's exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Right.
But it's definitely a conversation that we need to be having.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's a conversation that's only going to become more important
Yeah,
as technology continues to evolve.
for sure. For sure.
So buckle up, folks.
So yeah, this is just the beginning.
Because the digital age is here to stay.
It is.
And it's changing everything.
Absolutely everything. I think one of the things that people really like about the idea of e-voting is just how convenient it could be.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, you could vote from anywhere.
Yeah, from your couch.
Exactly. As
Right.
long as you have an internet connection, you're good to go.
No more waiting in line at the polling place,
Exactly.
which, you know, could be a huge barrier for some people,
Oh, yeah. Especially for people with disabilities or mobility issues.
right? Or people who work long hours or have childcare responsibilities.
Exactly. It could really open up access to voting for a lot of people.
And make the whole process a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Streamline everything.
Less paperwork.
Yeah. Fewer resources needed.
So there are definitely some potential upsides.
For sure.
But as we were saying before, security is the big elephant in the room.
Absolutely.
Like, we can't even begin to talk about the benefits of e-voting without addressing the security concerns.
Right, because if people don't trust the system,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter how convenient it is.
Exactly.
They're not going to use it.
And rightfully so.
Right.
And we're talking about the foundation of our democracy here,
Exactly. The right to vote is sacred.
and it needs to be protected.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about in terms of security?
Well, I think encryption is key. Yeah.
Making sure that the votes are encrypted.
Right, so that they can't be intercepted or tampered with.
Exactly. Like you were saying before, people are worried about hackers
Yeah.
getting into the system and changing the results.
Which is a valid concern.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we've seen it happen with other online systems.
All the time.
So how do we make sure that doesn't happen with e-voting?
Well, one thing is to have really strong encryption protocols in place.
Okay.
And those protocols need to be constantly updated.
Right, because hackers are always finding new ways to break in.
Exactly. It's a constant arms race.
And I think transparency is also really important.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
People need to understand how the system works and what security measures are in place.
Exactly.
If it's all shrouded in secrecy,
Right.
then people are going to be suspicious.
Of course.
So there needs to be a lot of open communication,
Yeah, and education.
right? Like educating the public about how e-voting works and why they should trust it.
And how to use it safely, right? Because it's a new technology for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a learning curve.
For sure.
But I think if we can get it right,
Yeah.
e-voting has the potential to be a really positive force for democracy.
I agree.
Make voting more accessible, more convenient, more secure.
Potentially even more secure than traditional voting.
Right. Because with traditional voting, you have all these issues with like voter ID laws and gerrymandering and all that stuff.
Yeah, and hanging chads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So e-voting could potentially address some of those issues,
It could.
but it's not a magic bullet.
No.
There are still a lot of challenges to overcome.
For sure.
But it's definitely a conversation worth having.
Absolutely.
So moving beyond the specifics of social media and e-voting,
Okay.
I think there's a bigger question here about how we as individuals navigate this digital landscape.
Yeah, like how do we stay informed and engaged without getting sucked into all the negativity and misinformation?
Exactly. Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah, especially with the 24/7 news cycle.
Right. And everyone's constantly shouting their opinions online.
It's a lot.
It is. So
Yeah.
how do we filter through all that noise?
Well, I think it's about being intentional with our media consumption.
Okay.
Like being mindful of the sources we're getting our information from.
Yeah. Are they credible?
Exactly.
Are they biased?
Just do they have a good track record?
And being willing to diversify our sources.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like not just reading stuff that we already agree with,
Exactly.
but seeking out different perspectives.
Challenging our own assumptions.
Yeah, because that's how we grow
It is.
and learn.
And become more informed citizens.
And I think it's also about being critical of what we see online.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like not just taking everything at face value,
Right.
but questioning things,
Doing our own research.
fact-checking.
Exactly.
And I think that's especially important when it comes to political information.
Oh, yeah. Because there's so much misinformation out there.
And it can be really hard to tell what's true and what's not.
Especially when it's coming from sources that look legitimate.
Right. Like they might have a fancy website or a lot of followers.
But that doesn't mean they're telling the truth.
Exactly.
So we have to be really careful.
And I think it's also important to remember that social media is not real life.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like it's easy to get caught up in the drama and the outrage.
And the echo chambers.
Yeah. But it's important to step back sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and remember that there's a whole world out there.
And that most people are not extremists.
Right. Like
Mm.
most people are just trying to live their lives.
And be good people.
Exactly.
So let's not let social media warp our perception of reality.
Yeah, let's keep things in perspective.
Absolutely.
So I think what we're talking about here is really digital literacy.
Yeah, like being able to navigate the digital world safely and effectively.
Exactly. And I think that's a skill that's becoming increasingly important.
Essential
Yeah.
for everyone, especially for young people.
Yeah, because they're growing up in a world that's completely saturated with technology.
It's all they know.
So we need to make sure that they have the tools
Yeah.
to navigate that world responsibly.
And ethically,
Absolutely.
because the choices they make online
Yeah.
have real-world consequences.
For themselves
Yeah,
and for our democracy.
for everyone.
So it's a big responsibility.
It is.
But it's also an exciting opportunity
It is.
to use technology for good.
To make the world a better place.
Exactly.
So let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's be the change we want to see in the world.
I love that.
I do too.
So we've talked a lot about the individual's role in navigating the digital landscape.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the role of tech companies?
Oh, yeah. They have a huge responsibility too.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones who are creating these platforms.
And the algorithms.
Exactly. So they have a lot of power.
A lot of power.
And with great power comes great responsibility.
Spider-Man said that.
He did.
Wise words.
So what do you think are some of the things that tech companies could be doing to promote a healthier digital environment?
Well, I think transparency is really important.
Okay.
Like being more transparent about how their algorithms work
Yeah.
and how they're using our data.
Right, because right now it's all very opaque.
Yeah, it's like a black box.
Exactly. And I think that breeds mistrust.
Oh, for sure.
So if tech companies want to build trust,
Yeah.
they need to be more open about what they're doing.
And how they're making decisions.
And I think they also need to take more responsibility for the content that's on their platforms.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they can't just say, oh, we're just a platform. We're not responsible for what people post.
Right, because they're profiting from it.
Exactly.
And they have the power to control it.
So they need to be more proactive about removing harmful content.
Like hate speech and misinformation.
Yeah. And they need to be more careful about how they're amplifying content.
Right, because their algorithms can really make a difference in terms of what people see
Exactly.
and what goes viral.
So they need to be more mindful of the potential consequences of their actions. And I think they also need to be more supportive of independent journalism.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because right now, a lot of the information that people are getting online is coming from unreliable sources.
Yeah, and a lot of those sources are being amplified by social media algorithms.
Exactly.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think tech companies need to play a role in breaking that cycle.
By supporting credible news outlets.
Exactly.
And by making it easier for people to find accurate information.
Right. And I think that's something that we can all do as individuals as well.
Yeah, we can all support good journalism.
By subscribing to reputable news sources.
I'm sharing their content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if we want to have a healthy democracy,
Yeah.
we need to have a well-informed public.
And that starts with access to accurate information.
So it's a collective effort.
It is. We all have a role to play.
Tech companies,
Yeah.
individuals,
Excellence.
everyone.
We're all in this together.
I like that.
Me too.
So I think that's a good place to wrap up this part of our conversation.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have
from social media to e-voting
to digital literacy
to the role of tech companies.
and everything in between.
Yeah, it's a complex issue,
It is.
but it's one that we need to be talking about.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining me for this deep dive,
My pleasure.
and we'll be back soon with more.
Can't wait. It's a tough question, you know? How do we leverage technology to strengthen democracy rather than undermine it?
Right. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's something we need to be thinking about constantly.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's any easy answer.
No.
But I think education is a really important part of it.
Okay. Like digital literacy.
Yeah, exactly. Teaching people how to be critical thinkers online, how to evaluate sources, how to spot misinformation.
Right. So it's not just about teaching people how to use technology, but also how to think critically about the information they're encountering online.
Exactly. Because technology is just a tool. It can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
And it's up to us to decide how we're going to use it.
So we need to be teaching those critical thinking skills from a young age.
Absolutely. I think it needs to be part of the curriculum. From elementary school all the way up to college.
Yeah. Because it's a skill that's becoming increasingly essential in the digital age.
It's fundamental, like reading and writing.
Yeah. And it's not just about protecting ourselves from misinformation, but also about being able to participate in a democracy in a meaningful way.
Exactly. Because if we don't understand how technology is shaping our world,
Yeah.
then we're not really in control of our own destinies.
And we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of e-voting. But given the security concerns, do you think it's a viable solution long term?
That's a tough one. I think it has the potential to be really transformative,
Yeah.
but we need to make sure that we're doing it right.
Right.
And that means investing in the right technology, having strong security protocols, and being transparent with the public about how the system works.
So building trust is essential.
Oh, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
if people don't trust the system, they're not going to use it.
Right. And then we're back to square one.
Exactly. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, balancing convenience with security.
And transparency.
Exactly. But I think it's a challenge worth taking on.
I agree. Because if we can get e-voting right, it could really revolutionize the way we participate in democracy.
Yeah. Make it more accessible, more efficient, and hopefully even more secure.
Hopefully.
So I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
It's been a really fascinating conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
Me too. And I think we've covered a lot of important ground.
We have. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
But it's important stuff.
It is. The future of democracy depends on it.
Well said. So, to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And keep those brains engaged.
Yeah. Stay curious.
Yeah.
Stay informed. And stay engaged.
Because the future is in our hands.
It is. Let's make it a good one.
I'm with you on that.